we have to find out a little bit about Anthony Daniels before the Golden Robot, okay? What, you actually studied law and then business management before you got into drama.
Yes, I had very worried parents who, you know, I was always sort of doing little plays and acting and things, and they kept sort of stamping on me to stop me doing it, but they didn't succeed. They succeeded in stopping me doing it for a number of years, but after a while I went home one day and said, "You're not going to like this, but I'm going to go to drama school and become an actor."
And they couldn't see where the paycheck was going to come from.
Exactly, yes. My father ran a factory, you know, and they had little bags of things at the end of the day, and you don't get that as an actor.
Now, one of your first roles was you played a 65-year-old man on the stage, so again, Anthony Daniels in makeup.
Right, yes. Mind you, I mean, with jet lag today, I could almost play it again, right? Yes, the difficulty was that halfway through that thing, I had to appear as a kind of 16-year-old, so I had to take it all off halfway through and cut, and then put it on for the end of the play. But the next play I did, I aged from 14 to 21, and then back to my own son, who was 16.
Now, in the, well, I guess it's been in the mid-70s, you were a real, what we call trooper with the Young Vic organization.
Oh, yes, yes.
And then a lot of BBC radio?
Yes, I started off, I won a scholarship, first of all, when I left drama school to do radio work, which is very big in England. We have a big sort of...
is it sort of the soap opera thing, or dramas?
Oh, no, sort of proper drama. I mean, anything from full-length Shakespeare play to half-hour comedy.
Like radio used to be here.
Yes, it's a shame you don't have it. I think it'll come back, because it's a great medium.
Where along the line did this Star Wars thing happen?
Well, I suppose, I'm sorry, I keep kicking you. It happened, I was appearing in the West End as Guildenstern, in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead. And one day my agent said, "Go and meet George Lucas," who I said, because I didn't know about films in those days. You know. And she explained, and I didn't want to go, because she said it's part of a robot. So I said, "You're mad, don't play robots." I may wear a false beard occasionally, but I wear clothes. And she persuaded me to meet George, thank goodness.
Now, this was in England?
In England, in London, yes. So I went to meet him, and, you know, you've got to like him, haven't you? It's very exciting.
I think everyone likes George Lucas.
I was warned he was very shy, and so that made me a bit nervous, because you've got to do all the work.
But after you said you read the script, what, 4 or 5 times?
5 times, didn't understand a word. I mean,
it must have been a difficult script too.
What's a Dianoga? You know? And the only thing I did get out of reading it 5 times was that the part that George thought I might do was wonderful. He happened to be made of metal, but he was a human being with a huge heart and soul and personality, and a very likable person.
You know, there was another Englishman many years ago, Boris Karloff, who accepted a role that a lot of people turned down, the Frankenstein monster, because after reading the script, a lot of famous people like Bela Lugosi turned it down because it had no speaking parts, relatively few, and the makeup, you couldn't be seen. Was this a problem with you? I mean...
No, people say, you know, in the film, why don't you take the mask off at one point? And, you know, they're crazy, they don't understand.
Well, of course we can't do that, I
No,
understand.
right, but people do say that. Now, I took the part on the complete understanding that in no way was I going to be seen. What I didn't know at the time was that the film company would be worried that to say there was a human being inside would, they felt, ruin people's interest in the character and in the film, and would stop their suspension of disbelief, if I got that the right way around. And fortunately now they've realized that people actually don't mind knowing that I'm inside, so you know, I tend to be included a little more now.
How about today now? I don't know, countless millions have seen this movie. You've probably seen this movie more than any other movie in the history of cinema. You were on the Academy Awards, where again, all over the world you were seen, and yet very few have seen you as the real Tony Daniels. Does that bother you a little bit, or?
It bothers me in some ways. One, as I said, you know, there was no secret ever made that I wasn't going to have my face in the film. That would be ridiculous.
But no one thought the film would have that kind of
Certainly
response.
not. But again, nobody, at least of all me, thought that 3PO would become popular in the way that he has, I think. And so the whole thing is a surprise. And I've explained the attitude of the film company, which they have now realized that it isn't in fact necessary to keep it a secret. So I feel slightly better about that. But in the past it has been rather like, what should we say, writing a most wonderful novel, and the publisher forgets to put your name on the outside of it. You know, everyone says, what a wonderful novel. Wonder who wrote that. There's a natural thing when you're in any kind of business, and certainly in acting, where, you know, one job leads to another. You gradually, of course, build up.
You want to be recognized, I think.
Well, it's part of the professional system,
Right.
shall we say. But I don't resent it. I mean, I quite understand why it's happened.
Can you tell us a little bit about this fellow here? Now,
Yes, right.
What was
Well, first
the
of
most
all-
difficult thing for you to overcome?
First of all, most people think 3PO is very tall. Well, I'm 5'7", and this is a slightly smaller version. But he's about that much taller than me.
I see.
And
So it's a tight fit.
it was absolutely skin tight. I mean, more than skin tight. It wore in after a while. I mean, I wore in. It didn't. I kind of got smaller. Briefly, what's that? Fiberglass. The feet are plastic. That's plastic. The neck is plastic. Aluminium, sheet steel. I mean, they were so heavy I couldn't lift them at one point. And rubber. And I see through these little black holes here,
So you couldn't
but I
see.
have absolute tunnel vision so that I could see like that, but I couldn't see you unless I went like that, which gets a little confusing. Also, people couldn't look me in the eye, so they would act to my forehead or my ear, and they would sort of talk to me like that, and sort of search around for my eyes, saying, "You all right, Tony?" And then they would gradually, their faces would get a bit sort of blank and go
So
away.
actually, you probably couldn't bend down to see your Kenny Baker.
A lot of the time, I can't see R2-D2. No, a lot of the time, obviously, Kenny Baker wasn't there. Most of the time, it's a.
How about in some of the areas it was extremely warm on the desert? Must have been.
It was extremely cold on the desert.
Oh, cold.
Because if you imagine this as being practically a mirror surface.
Oh, I see.
It reflects all the heat. But the very cold air in Tunisia sort of got in there and there and there and down there. And I was shuddering with cold. And in the studio, it made up for it because I really was a bit like
Then
a
you were,
frankfurter.
an oven.
Been boiled, yeah.
What about how many times would you have to take it off and put it on during a shooting day?
Well,
let's say?
the first day I wore it all day, so it meant that I can't actually touch my face. So I was eating lunch like this, and it was like a real Tantalus situation. I couldn't actually touch my mouth. I was nearly in tears the first day because it hurt so much. After that, I said, "I'm sorry, I have to take it off at lunchtime."
I read stories that after a while, some of the crew forgot that you were
Oh,
you were a
absolutely.
human. They didn't serve you lunch. Or
Absolutely, they would blow the whistle for lunch. Wham! Everybody would be over there having lunch, and I'd be sort of standing there, kind of waddling, you know. Also, you know, in the studio, I had a chair with Anthony Daniels written across the back. I mean, like in films. You know,
Right.
I loved it.
Sure.
And it disappeared after a little while because I couldn't sit down. So I said, you know. Could you find the chair? And they said, well, it's really strange because that geezer Anthony Daniels never turned up, so we give his chair away. But they didn't know who I was at all.
What has this character done in the movie Star Wars for your career? Is it too early to tell, or?
Yes, it in fact has done nothing for my career at all, because most people don't associate me with it. And right now I'm appearing in Johannesburg in an American play, playing an American, which is kind of the opposite of him.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with Star Wars, because I'm not normally associated with it.
Any thoughts about the sequel, if indeed you are offered the old uniform again?
Well, I don't know what they think about 3PS. I don't know whether he will be in the sequel.
Oh, it's got to be. Got to be.
I have to ask him, I think. I don't think he was too happy filming. I think he was rather glad when it was all over.
One last question about the robots. You had a remarkable rapport with R2-D2, and they've compared it to all the great comedy teams, Abbott and Costello and Laurel and Hardy.
Very flattering.
Did you try to work out some sort of, or did it just come naturally?
Well, one thing that worries me about actors is they get a script, and you know it's really easy because all the words are written down. You can change some of them, but most of it does actually happen after you read it and read it and read it. It begins to happen by a kind of osmosis. So things happen naturally. You don't think how you should react at that moment. You react because you're playing him.
Right.
Now R2 arrives, and the trouble was acting with R2 was like acting with a traffic bollard, right? Because he never made a sound. He never moved properly, he never did anything right, and there was no reaction ever.
Yes.
So I was acting, as it were, with a traffic bollard, and that was slightly hard. You know, I didn't exactly go out and stand in the middle of the road and practice with the bollards, but it came down to that sort of thing. And when I saw them, the voice dubbed on, I was amazed, you know, because suddenly there was R2 acting
Right.
away, and I
Yes.
loved it. Yes.
Well, on behalf of all the fans in the western states here, and particularly in Northern California, here is our little Academy Award Oscar for you.
That's very nice.
And I hope that you reconsider, or I hope that the powers that be again have Anthony Daniels in that suit again, because you did a remarkable job. And I hope that we see the real Anthony Daniels in many more screen roles, because you're a good-looking guy and a very talented actor.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.